should check then. Do you want me to check?
Very well. Change the signs out the door.
She is?
Yep, she is.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
okay. Okay. All right, we're back in session. Matt,
All right,
finish up?
sure, just,
Yeah,
bringing up,
I'm sorry.
Lake Lauderdale, the cabin down there, I don't know if everybody's quite aware where, you know, the cabin, it's in pretty poor shape. We've had numerous since I've been here, people with ideas, that wanna help, get it, you know, fixed up or this or that. At one point, I had the state able to do some materials to fix it up.
No, you have.
But we would have to
Excuse me,
provide
Dan?
labor.
Hold on a minute. Dan?
Okay.
Dan, we're in session. We're in session. Can you either step
We're
out there?
back going? I
Yeah.
thought you were waiting for Deb. She
No.
come back in?
Yeah.
I gotta go.
Thank you, Dan.
So the cabin in the poor shape, there's been, certainly, I don't know if the program is still open for the materials, but the biggest problem with the cabin is it's been long past its, they fixed it, you know, there's cedar shingle roof, which is whatever, but foundation's gone, the logs are rotted, this and that. I don't have any great ideas right now. I mean, I gotta throw this out there, you know, with everything from, hey, maybe an Eagle Scout project could build you something. I need to start looking in with the state because it isn't our park, it is the state's, what we can and can't do with this building. So I'll probably need some of Roger's guidance on that again. But I do know, like our safety officer, Phil, all like last year, he's been, you know, after me because the building it's turnbuckled together in spots and it's rotted out, you know, it's mice, the rat. And it serves as the break room / office for the park manager. It's not a cabin that you, you know, staying overnight in or sleeping or anything, but it is a spot. It's the lunchroom, it's the break room for our employees. And we don't have something for them other than that. Both parks up in Hewlett, that has a cabin, but it's in much better shape. The one down there is just in poor shape, so I just want to throw that out there, that you may hear it again next month. You know, maybe I can come up with a solution or something. I am going to have to start looking at that, but I wanted to make everybody aware.
Matt, youth service project.
That,
Check with youth services. Bet you they have a,
yeah, well, they want to do something, but a lot of the projects, what happened was, and I'm not bashing Mike or anything, they got a guy that can put a roof on. Well, a roof is not going to help us right now. Okay, you know, you might have the roof fall on top, if they got a painter, they want to paint it, but that's not going to help us right now. The problems are much bigger, and that's why I've been reluctant for, you know, the smaller things to let them rip at it, because you're going to pull off some, cedar shingles and they're going to tell us, hey, everything's rotten, we can't do this. And now you got a cabin with no roof, you know. What's the size? Oh, I would say no bigger than 20 by 20. I'm just guessing. But there's an old stone, fireplace in it.
Really cool.
It's a nice building, but there's not enough lipstick at this point. Yes.
Do we own it?
No, so we don't own the park.
I know it.
We're leasing the park and the buildings in the park.
Well, what is, and I apologize, you probably went through all this while I was jabbering back here, but.
No, we did. I knew I was going to bring up this
What?
conversation because
We're gonna go to the state and talk about the building because.
Have you been to the state and talked to them?
they know about it. Yeah, they sent their engineers out before and we didn't really come up with much.
It's again,
We're allowed to do whatever we want?
Oh, we need their permission to do, so we're dancing the dance.
Okay,
So,
sorry. I'm caught up now.
yeah, we've been dancing the dance with the state for a while because they don't wanna pay to fix the thing up. We don't wanna pay to fix the thing up. So nobody wants to pay to fix the thing up. And plus, we've had SHPO in there because it's got some historic aspects to it. So we've been circling each other for quite a while. But the point of fact is, there needs some kind of covered workspace for the folks that work there, our folks that work there, to go, for the park manager. Because right now, the choice is without using the cabin, the choice is the open-sided pavilion or the bathrooms. Those are the only other structures on there. So we've been circling each other for a while on that cabin, and nobody wants to come to a conclusion as to what to do with it.
Melissa,
I would think that if I was the state, I would be in a hurry to fix that building when there's employees of the county that are in there using that as a lunch break room. It seems like they're putting themselves in a bad spot liability-wise if one of these employees that places the fall on them or someone was to get hurt.
We're probably.
I think we're the ones putting ourselves in the bed.
So we don't have any.
Using a lousy building, no. We
Wow.
just, we lease it
Okay.
kinda as is.
Does that have a bathroom in it
No. It does have water for a sink.
for summertime use?
Yeah, water for a sink to wash your dishes or lunchtime, you know, that sort of thing, but.
I would say, just a quick thought on this, is that whatever the cost is, I compare it to the cost of buying an Amish shed and
Yeah.
creating a workspace and putting a barrier fence around that, and with a sign that says, this belongs to New York State and they won't repair it, and just move right up the hill. Next
Part of their shared services program.
Right.
Dave O'Brien?
I would be more concerned, people in the park getting in there, visitors to the park, or overnight visitors getting in and getting hurt, and we'd have some liability on that also. And we really should think about doing something, so I appreciate our employees, and certainly they're paramount in this, but also, what about other people getting in there and getting hurt? That, to me, is a bigger liability than our employees. Shut this down.
Or make it an Airbnb.
But, all these ideas, I mean, there are things that I've gone through too. I don't have a I'm a shed thing, I'm like, ooh, we could get an office space, you know, we could put an Amish shed in there and make it an office space. Some of the stuff I do have to find out is our New York State guidelines, if we have employees there, what we have to provide for them too. Like, does it have to have the sink in? Do we have to have a,
Well,
you know, a break room? I don't know some of that stuff, so I have to look into that to see what we are required to provide for our employees.
And you can
Because
move
they
it up
could be,
closer, couldn't you?
What?
You can move it up, you don't need to be down there, you put it up closer to the pavilion?
Well, it's not in a bad spot now, it's between the
No,
beach and
but
the pavilion.
that means you gotta tear the other one down.
Oh, yeah, right, there's plenty of spaces to do something different.
Okay.
Yeah, right. It could be, I mean,
Where does the water go from the sink, or shouldn't I ask?
probably should.
So I don't think we're gonna solve the problem of what to do with the shed right now. I believe that Matt's purpose today was just to let us know it's again, working its way to the top of the list, and that him and Roger are working with the state, and so y'all know what's going on, there's a reminder. But it's really, until they get answers from the state, there's really nothing we can do as a committee or.
Just don't wanna blindside you, you know, this summer, you know, or something to that effect, but I am working on it to see what we can, what we have to provide to our employees, you know. A lot of things that go into it. I feel like up at Hewlett's it'd be much simpler.
Well, we own the whole thing.
Right, we own it.
We can do whatever we want. We'd have to have the state's permission to put a shed in, ironically, so.
So I do think, did we get permission to build the pavilion? How did that
I'm
work?
not sure if those were there, I'll have to look at the deep dive. At one time, there was supposed to be a golf course, over 100, RV sites, and they had, at Lake Lauderdale, they had I have a map, there was quite the development, proposed for that, and the state wussed out on it and decided to lease it to us. But there was supposed to be a huge campsite down there.
There is a Lake Water campsite, but it
Yeah,
has
there's
nothing.
there's supposed to be a state campsite there, with ironically, trailer boat launch there when we were having that discussion.
Wow.
And 20 years ago, the board actually almost had a vote, and they actually might have had a vote, to give it back to the state, and because of the cost. But, Mr. Brown was very persuasive in convincing the board that this, county should keep it and keep running it.
The state does appreciate us operating it, I do know that from the, you know, from the.
Okay, well, I think we drowned that subject.
Oh, are you under other for Matt?
Sure.
And I should have asked Bob this before the meeting. When we hit COVID, we were about ready to close everything up. Have we divested ourselves totally of Summit Lake and the water? Are we out of that?
We're not out of that. I haven't done the deeds for Bob yet. He reminded me of that the other day. It's been moving down my pile of things with everything else that happened. So all I have to do is prepare the deed and the paperwork, and we'll close that and be done.
So we're still liable right now for something happens, kid got hurt and that.
We are.
Okay. So when do you figure that'll be taken care of?
As soon as I can get out of meetings like this to go prepare the deed.
Okay. I don't think there's any tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
You got it.
All right, Melissa, your turn. It's noon.
This will be the gateway
Did you-
to the big conversation,
I
I
know.
guess, about the committee room, and so I wanted to bring up, yeah, right till 1 o'clock. I wanted to bring up the subject of this room, of the chambers. Prior to COVID, a couple years ago, there was a discussion about this room, the audio system, upgrades to it, and I guess how badly they were needed. So there was discussion, between the clerk of the board and IT, and I believe the past county administrator, regarding the upgrade and kind of moving forward as far as the cost and what would be needed to bring it up to where it's a little more usable. We did have a discussion.
Forgive my rudeness, but did you want to invite Terry McDowell back in?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was supposed to text her, I appreciate it. Yeah, let me do that. Okay, thank you. So we did discuss it further, and we were able to get, some ideas and quotes, and the price came in at over $100,000. That does include, revamping the entire audio system. It also includes, I think a huge benefit where the chairman of the committee is able to have more control of the room. So it would alleviate the whole talking over each other, one person speaking and then another person talking over. Basically, you push a button, the person up here lets you in, you speak. So it gives a little more control to the room. I thought that was a huge benefit. But I guess at this point, we just wanted to see if there, was interest in moving forward, to coming up with a plan on what to do with this room. Now, because we've gone through the whole COVID and realized that there's a need for some kind of, system where you can see each other. If we're not using the laptops, the idea would be to put in cameras, I believe 2, is what we had talked about, one in the back and one in the front. It does, the cost is much more than what we've seen in the other rooms, but the way I understand it, this room has never been upgraded. There's never been any change from the original, audio system. And I also understand that it's basically kept together with Band-Aids and a lot of patients, from Debbie and Sandy. So, I guess we're just looking to see if there's interest in pursuing this going forward. There are some vendors out there, there's some on state contract, we believe, that we can talk to further as far as getting more quotes. Otherwise, we would have to put an RFP out, to see what we get back. But it's gonna be, a little more expensive. It's gonna be over $100,000 by the way it looks to upgrade the system.
Bob, I see you. I'm looking at you and then Dave's hand's popping up and down. The Honorable Mr. Henke.
I just wanted to point out that, just the sound system is, something that we don't tend to think about, but it's a pretty tenuous sort of thing. Back when I first came in as chairman, the very first thing they told me was that they'd take turns choking me out if I touched that metal box in there, moved the door, moved any switches. If you go near it, if you hang your hand on it, the sound system goes out. And it's been something they've been fighting with for the past, probably 15 years, I don't know. It's been a long time that you get it set carefully, then you don't touch it for several years. So that really needs fixing anyway. We've been, way overdue for that. And we're probably at this point now where we're maybe in a better position to do it than ever before. This might be the time to fix that, if nothing else. But, bundling it into the whole package makes a lot of sense right now, and it makes a lot of sense to me to do it for that reason, so the next chairman doesn't get beat up when he screws up the box.
Pam?
Box length is good.
Yeah,
Box
I
length-
just wanted to let Supervisor Hanky know that I got the same scolding when I became chairperson. Not to touch anything in here.
You got power, Debbie, and you didn't know that. Dave?
I guess the question is I think we really need to find what we want in here. We build a sound system that's $100,000, but are there alternatives that are gonna save the taxpayers dollars? It does the same thing without all the whistles and bells. We really need every single whistle and bell to upgrade this room, audio-wise.
The other thing you have to take into account is, adaptive technology. We have some of that now, but for folks that are hearing impaired, we have to take that into account. We have to have a provision for that. So for when people attend meetings, they can't hear. I know Debbie can speak to what we have now. We do have one or two seats that are, adapted for that. And we did have one, person who would come to meetings for quite a while when I was first here that used it on a fairly regular basis. So when we're talking about the sound system, we're talking about things like that. Also, or at least let's assume we're having our board meetings here, that one Friday a month, presentations. When somebody's wanted to use an electronic presentation, the screens have been very difficult to set up a screen where everybody can see it. Either been on one side or the other side, or else the folks up here step down and we put it up here so the folks can see it. But the adaptive technology is something that we definitely have to take into account, folks that are hearing impaired.
If we upgrade this room, what other things can we use it for?
That's been, there's been a lot of discussion around that as well. Even if you all decide never to have committee meetings in this room again, I guess then we go back to using it once a month for just the board meetings. There's pluses and minuses of using this room for other things. I mean, we could rip out all the seats and reconfigure the entire room, which I've talked to Matt and he cringes because there's a huge expense involved with that because of all the ornate woodwork in this room, and that, I guess, jacks the price up quite a bit to even reconfigure the room. But if it were just used for the board meetings alone, I mean, that saves the wear and tear on the room. Matt also kind of informed me on that whole subject. If the room is used all the time, before you know it, the carpet has to be replaced, and it's not one area, it's the entire room. There's a lot more maintenance and upkeep that would have to take place if we were to use it for more than just the board meetings. I look at this room and I look at the business that is conducted here and the people that we have in this room that are making all these decisions for the entire county. And to me, it seems like a worthwhile investment. I mean, this is where all the stuff happens. So I don't know why we wouldn't want to invest and make it so people can hear you all and things are clear and we can see you, and the clerk of the board has a little bit easier of time in her day-to-day work as well. But I know there's a cost involved in it. I don't know, with some of the ARPA funds, I know we keep saying that, but I know other counties have been investing in their board chambers. I believe Saratoga just did it, and I know Warren County just invested in theirs as well because it was in really bad shape. So, I mean, I think this is the time.
Well, Dave talked about bells and whistles, but I think Warren County just paid $200,000 for theirs. So it sounds like we got half the bells and whistles. I know, maybe we need to know what that
Last time I was up in Warren County, they didn't even have a wall to hang the bells and whistles on, so they've come a long way.
They've made progress.
Well, I was just up there last night, I don't remember how many improvements they made, I'd have to ask up there, they put a projector up on the ceiling, but I don't see many other upgrades unless the sound system is substantial, because the control panel for the sound system is still the same one I saw there 5 years ago.
Well, it was in the paper, it was $200,000, so.
Maybe they haven't done it yet.
Possible. Hopefully they get better upstairs.
Dan?
I'm not opposed to upgrades, but I'm opposed to spending $100,000 right now, especially after our illustrious treasurer reported a downfall in our sales tax collection, and he hoped wasn't a trend. Let's run this out a few months and see if it's just a hiccup and things stay good. But if things are gonna go south over the next few months, I think we gotta tighten our belt a little bit and not be spending a lot of money. That's my opinion. And I'm not on the committee, but I appreciate you allowing me to provide my thoughts.
I mean, you're not gonna let me have the little box where I can flip the switch?
Yeah, that scares me, you sitting up there with the button.
Ejector seat.
Ejector seat. Dave?
So, the question arises, we're about to get another discussion about where we're gonna have our committee meetings. Just dawned on me that right now, this isn't as convenient as some of the other places. Maybe we should be looking at the upgrades we can make to this room that would potentially change our decision about where we have committee rooms. Maybe make this room more functional for committee meetings also. And if we're making one investment, instead of making a $6,000 investment over there, X number of $1,000 investment over here, we're doing it one place that benefits everyone. Is that a way to look at it, a little differently?
No.
I
think it is a way to look at it. I think it is the way to look at it. We're talking about prioritization of resources, so we got to figure out which has a higher priority.
Yep. I think that was one of the things we tried to bring up last month when we had this discussion on which room was something along those lines. Don?
Is the classroom already set up for
Yeah.
everything to have committee meetings?
Yes.
And why are we having committee meetings in here?
I think part of it is because there is some setup and takedown for us to move in as opposed to when other departments are using the classroom. That room is used often by other departments, not just by us. So that's
Okay,
what,
so you're
open the gate into that conversation.
Okay, so we're gonna invest in this, that classroom's all set, or we're gonna invest how much in setting this one up in here?
6,000. Versus 100,000 out here.
And what do we still have to go on these Zoom meetings?
Roger, you want to give a highlight of that latest update before we go into this next conversation, please?
All right, the short answer is no. There's a much longer answer. So the new budget, changed the rules a little bit. I'm going to read you the State Committee on Open Government's introductory paragraph, which might lead to more discussion. So, budget for 2023, made changes to the open meetings law, expanded the use of video conferencing by public bodies to conduct open meetings. Here's the key word: under extraordinary circumstances, regardless of a declaration of emergency. So, what it basically does is it tasks the board to come up with a policy for video meetings. In no case can a member video in unless there are extraordinary circumstances. And the state has defined some extraordinary circumstances, but it's not an exclusive list. Or it can define other extraordinary circumstances, but again, it has to be extraordinary. So, for example, my regularly scheduled vacation coming up is not an extraordinary circumstance. You kind of knew it was coming, right? So the board has to have a quorum physically convened in a place that's accessible to the public. Other members can join by video if there's extraordinary circumstances. They cannot count toward a quorum. The short answer is, if the board decided not to adopt rules to allow video conferencing, then no, there would be no video conferencing, and we'd be back to normal. Well, whatever you want to call it, Dan.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, right, might be a better word for it. And then the public access rules are the same as they were beforehand.
Do we have committee meetings not being on Zoom, but still have board meetings for the public and everybody to come in, or?
So there's two things that video kind of gets lost in the shuffle. There's two decisions or two different operations going on here. One is streaming the meetings to members of the public with everybody here, let's call it, okay? So that you can do anytime you want to. You could always have done that. We just didn't have the video capability to do that. The second one is members of the board or committee attending the meetings by video conference. So that has different rules. So you can have your meetings wherever you want. It's allowing members of the committee to video stream in and participate. That the rule change comes in is different.
So we can go back to having committee meetings in that room without cameras and the computers and all that.
Yes.
And that wouldn't cost us anything.
Correct. If that's the rule the board chose to make, and then if you can't make the meeting, you can't make the meeting.
Dave?
There was a clarification, because I'm having a discussion with 3 other agencies I'm involved in. One of the clarifications that came out from open meetings law, it was sent around, was that you can in fact have multiple locations.
Multiple public locations.
Multiple public locations, and the quorum was involved in all multiple locations as long as they're published and open to the public.
Correct.
From my understanding, what reading is and getting clarification from attorneys is that you couldn't have an individual join from their house. That wouldn't be considered a public place. You can't have to find a location such as the town hall, come in for where people could come into. And multiple members should be in that room.
Well, now we're playing, so if let's say we had a quorum here, okay? The quorum present, if the rules of the board allow it, if the board is adopted parenthetically by a local law, not just by rules of the board.
Correct.
One or more members that didn't constitute a quorum, so I guess, say on a 7-member committee, if you had 4 bodies here, the other 3 people could attend by video conference from wherever they wanted to, as long as there were extraordinary circumstances. Or you could have multiple public places that could convene, so you could have 3 people in one place, and 3 people in one place and 1 person in another public place. They could then video conference in together, but that seems a little cumbersome. So I'm talking about the basic thing where everybody's here. All right, if you have a quorum present, then the other members could attend by video conference. And I'm talking about now members of the committee. I'm not talking about Mr. Shaw today, for example. No process would have to allow him to video conference in.
I'd have to come up here if I
You
wanted
have to come up here if you want to play. Again, subject to whatever rules the board chooses to adopt, but they're not talking about non-members. They're talking about members in all these rules. And in a state of emergency, we'd be back to, whatever the state of emergency defined, right, if we were. So yes, you wouldn't have to do that. For the meeting to be a legal meeting. The streaming thing is a completely, if you want people that aren't here to be able to see that meeting, if you want to, I was going to use the word film, which is like 300 years old, but if you want to make that meeting available to other people, okay, then either contemporaneously with the meeting happening or at a later date, you have to have some means and method to record that. If you decide, I don't want to do that either, but if somebody attends by video conference, if you're going to allow video conferencing in, then you have to then allow the public to observe out. So one Zoom in means that everybody else has to be able to attend out there as well. Yeah, you need to be on the.
So record you.
I just wanted to say one thing really quickly, just because I don't know if it would affect anybody's decision or not. I know I've heard ARPA funds mentioned a couple of times. The decision about fitting up the room, just so you all are aware, this room has to be changed. So it will be in the budget next year if it's not something that we end up doing this year. Doesn't mean we have to do the video, and the video honestly is a fairly small part, you know, fitting up the room, but the, audio system in here is extremely old, and it just has to be replaced. So I just wanted to mention that. Same thing with the committee room over here. I mean, it would be in the budget for next year to refit up that room as we're working through. We're doing DSS this year and a couple of other, meeting rooms that are out there. And we did the classroom. So I just wanted to mention that to you all so that you don't think, you know, not spending it this year will make it go away. You know, it would just end up being in the budget next year, and so.
Which they still have to approve, though.
Right,
Right,
well,
so you'd be requesting,
still
put it in the budget.
I would be
Super-
requesting.
Yeah,
That's correct.
I want to
Understand.
thank you, Terry, for that explanation. So in reality, we could wait till budget time and see how it fits in the big picture, see how our financial reports flow for the next few months. And we could immediately, if we choose, according to Roger, go back to normal. Is that what you're saying, Roger?
Yes,
Yeah, so,
you could always do that. Once the building was open, you could,
well, no, there was something about it. You said you had to wait until
You
it
could
worked out to
still
the
do.
state budget definition of streaming and forums and all that, and you clarified it. So, I mean, it's perfect now.
again, the question in the budget, my question in the budget was going to be, what obligation did you have to broadcast,
Right.
okay?
And I want to echo Matt's comments where he said, we got a budget, let's work with it, and if we want to make improvements for next year, put it in the budget this fall and see how it all fits. I'm totally in support of that.
Sue?
Roger, legally, is there anything that has changed with, because of the archival records management? You know, we switched from doing regular minutes to now broadcasting in YouTube Zoom to the cloud, which is there for public transparency. Have they pulled that part back at all? Has that come up at the state level as to what we do for historical reference?
Well, you still have to produce minutes, and if you're conducting video conferencing, you have to transcribe the meeting upon request.
Okay. But there's nothing that says that you have to now have YouTube or that ability to research it. You can just shut that off.
Right. Unless you're video conferencing, in which case it has to go out as well as in.
Right.
So in other words, we can't have a quorum present, allow one person to video into the quorum and say to folks, well, if you want to watch that person, you have to be here.
Right.
If we're allowing somebody to video in, then we have to allow everybody else out there to video out, to watch by video.
So one thing we have to do in the next 60 days is come up with a policy,
By the end of, I think it's the end of June.
end of June. So the next order of business should be someone putting together that discussion about the resolution that we have to put for video conferencing,
If you want to allow video conferencing.
but I think we still have to have a policy.
Not if you're not gonna allow it. If your local law says if you don't pass a local law allowing for video conferencing and then develop a policy, there is no video conference.
Carol, you're up. Jump in.
Thank you. Good discussion. I may be a minority. I'm sure I am. Back to normal, the phrase gets used with technology. In my previous career, this was normal. We did this all the time. I was stationed around the globe, and we connected back to whatever organization we had to connect back to on a daily basis. So just put that in perspective in terms of the consideration with technology. It's going forward, it's advancing, it's becoming extremely capable. It does challenge us a little bit administratively to do that. It does challenge us right now economically to finance the upgrades that are necessary to be there. But I don't believe back to normal would be a good phrase to use. I would say if we want to return to a traditional meeting construct, we can, but a lot of organizations meet this way. And it's a matter of a policy conversation as to what we want to allow and not to allow. So that's kind of where I sit on that. So if the consensus is that we're going to require everybody to meet in person in the county building, then that's fine. But there's always going to be somebody who wants to connect for whatever purpose at some point in time with technology to a meeting. Thank you.
The new amendments state that, I'm gonna read it again, it's not a section of the law, but it's from the advisory stuff from the, Committee on Open Government. The public body may, in its discretion, allow members to participate remotely under extraordinary circumstances, as long as there is a quorum of members gathered at a physical location or locations, Mr. O'Brien, open to the public, at locations that do not allow for in-person physical attendance.
I personally feel I'm with Darrell. Technology's changed. We found that more people got involved in committee meetings, so they didn't have to travel up here. I think it's important we explore that, where we end up going. I think it's really important to look at that for the advantage of our members who can't spend 45 minutes coming down from Putnam to Fort Edward for a 15 to half an hour meeting. I mean, it's an hour and a half to get here for a half an hour meeting. I think we should try and accommodate people where we can. We all have different things we're committed to, and we're all committed to being supervisors and doing our best job. But I think we should be looking at how do we make it convenient for everyone.
Not convenience, though, it's extraordinary circumstances. Distance, right, you're gonna have to decide as a body whether a distance is an extraordinary circumstance, and then you're gonna get into the question of what's the distance.
So, just speculating out, if Darrell said, I'm gonna use Putnam Town Hall to join in, and it was published as a location, does not meet their criteria?
That's,
in a
yes.
public place? So there's potential that, with foresight, I know it's a little more burden for people, because we needed that added into it, but can't we consider doing things like that?
You could always do that. Under the old rules, you could do that, as long as you're at a public place.
Correct.
But it does say they don't, if people video in, they do not have to, if the quorum is here, the public is not required to be allowed to know the place nor allowed into the area that such member is meeting from virtually.
So, again, if you're using public places, it's different than, you could always use a public place. You could always have people coming in from different public places. It's coming in from your house, my house, you're on vacation in Florida, that kind of thing. Remember, we always talked about how's that become a public place? You had to give notice. So again, Debbie would have to give notice of the public places that the person was coming in from. But you still need you need a quorum physically present at a public place. It could be multiple public places. But I dare say that most of the places that people are coming in from now are not public places. So if you want to readjust to the public place thing, then again, we're fine. We could always do that.
Okay. Well, the first switch I flipped was Dave's, because you cut off Bob Hankey again. You cut off 3 people today. You're on 3 strikes, you're out. No talking. Go ahead, Bob, you had your hand up. You forgot now.
I just off the Dave, he's cutting me off.
You cut Darrell off too, so don't feel bad.
I wanted to take a kind of a giant step back, because this seems like a fairly simple thing to start with. Number one, are we gonna keep on holding our board meetings here? Yes. So this room needs to be fixed up. B, where are we gonna hold our committee rooms? The classroom's set up perfectly for it, let's do them there. Let's not spend money in there, let's use that for executive session like it was supposed to be for when it was built. And that way we don't disrupt so much work out there when we're having committee meetings in there, because we used to really screw up, completely bring things to a stop out there so they can't hear. We're so noisy and carrying on with the doors open. That seems pretty simple. Then we get into the next step is, how do we fix the technology? And that's, I think, Dan is probably right, we just do that in the budget session. But I think that we can very, very quickly make a decision that, board meetings here, committee meetings there, executive session in there. Doesn't seem hard to me.
Al?
You're not gonna have video executive session in there, so somebody
You don't want the video for executive session, right?
Well, if somebody wants to attend the board meeting and you go into executive session, we all walk back there, that person's gonna be sitting out there. sitting out here on hold. Okay, if that's the way you want it to be, I'm just saying that.
After Hill and Helmut want to go to executive session.
Al?
And to tie the bow on Mr. Hankey's simple, there is $233,000 in the IT reserve. If you wanted to move forward with that sooner than later, you could, in theory, tap the reserve, and if the year turned out favorable, you could always replenish the reserve. I can tell you right now that I'm almost done with the financials to the comptroller. You're going to be pleased with the way general fund turned out, but I understand being cautious going forward. You know, we don't want to go to Jamaica twice on the same money, but I think that there is money set aside already for IT capital needs. If you needed or wanted to move that forward sooner, you could tap that fund, and if the year turned out the way that it looks, you could always replenish those funds and more if you chose to.
And what if it doesn't?
If it doesn't, you're only out money you had set aside to do that kind of work anyway. To me, there's no harm in tapping the reserve other than Terry throwing a shoe at me saying, hey, wanted that for something else, you know?
You got good distance.
That's just an option to kind of expedite it if you wanted to do it sooner than later. You're welcome.
No, I like it. I just hadn't thought about that.
Mr. O'Brien?
So first of all, the research still has to be done. We might as well start it now, no matter where we take the money from. Figure out what we need to do here, find out the cost, so we can plan it out. Second of all, I do like Bob's simple approach idea. That classroom's all set up, ready to go. Yes, a little convenience moving the desks around, but we've had meetings down there that worked well. Keep this for board meetings and executive sessions in there.
Mr. Rozell?
You have to have the laptops, everything set up down there like we're doing here? Okay, so say Daryl's picture will be on the wall.
Yeah.
Yell at him from that to, it ain't the same as yelling at somebody face to face.
Would you,
No.
we can knock the video off and we don't have to listen to it all. Mr. Shaw?
Well, it seems like we're still making this complicated. Can we start our next committee meeting right in that room with no video or audio and go back? Or, well, I mean, you have audio, that's the recording. But pre-COVID committee meeting, could we go in there and start that at the next committee meeting?
As long as everybody's here.
Pardon me?
As long as everybody's here.
Or as long as you got a quorum. That's all you need is a quorum.
Right, but if you're saying if you're gonna have somebody at a public location that's also zooming in.
I don't want any of that. But what I'm saying, Roger said we could go back to pre-COVID and start that process and have a regular committee meeting in there. Have no laptops, no spending $6,000, no nothing. And we'd have a committee meeting.
Right.
Okay, so how does it get any simpler than that? To me, that is so simple. It's scary, and I think that's what's scaring everybody. Next committee meeting's in there. The problem always was, who makes the decision? Is it committee members of government ops? Is it got to be done at the full board and everybody gets scared and sends it back to a committee? It got sent to IT and IT got scared this morning and sent it to government ops. And
Well, if we're going with deciding with the committee, then we're going.
Sam's,
Oh, Sam. You gotta unmute.
There we go. Yeah, it's, it's no simpler than what Dan said. You got a training room that's all set up down at the other end and ready to go, that has much more capability to put people in, so we have other people drop by, like the public, to see things and to see it and hear, real transparency in time, than it is to put it into a room that's designed for, probably 25 to 30 people. And, and we're right back where we were to begin with. If we go that route, we have a room that there's spacious enough down there. It's already set up. I agree with Dan. We can make it real simple. We got one down there, it would fit everybody if everybody came in. And if we had people from the outside, rather than going to the smaller room and then having to move it And because we have more people there that come from the public that want to see something. I think as time goes on here, we're going to start seeing more and more people attend our committee meetings, especially if we're not going to be Zooming them at all. So that's just,
Promise one last comment.
Personally, Dave had his hand up first this
Oh.
time.
So, I'd just like to make a point, we're still not done with COVID. We should at least try to get some separation. Don't get that separation in the middle of the committee room, we can't get that separation in the other room.
Dan?
I'm confused about this, Roger, so maybe I'm wrong. If we go down to that committee room and start broadcasting like we're doing now, don't we have to have a policy before we do that? That's what it sounded like. You said we are required to adopt a policy to move forward if we're going to allow all this to happen.
By the end of June. So if you're talking about tomorrow, you could go down to that room. If everybody's here.
Okay, so
you can have that.
The cutoff.
Right.
Okay.
If everybody's here, you can have that meeting anywhere you want in this building, as long as Debbie's put out the right room number notice for it ahead of time. So the public knows where to go. Okay? If the minute you start using technology, you have to have the ability to use it. Every speaker has to be able to be identified, okay?
Right.
You have to be able to see the member. Remember, when they talk about member of the public body, they're talking about committee. In the case of a committee, they're talking about members of the committee. Okay? You have to be able to see and hear them both ways. So if there's no video used, you can have the meeting in my office if you want to, as long as we got enough space to jam everybody in that needs to be in there. So the issues arise when everybody's not here. And the easiest way to do the policy is, if you don't do anything, everybody's got to be here, and we're done.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
What do you think, Tim? You're on the committee.
I kind of like the idea of that room over there, whatever they call it, the classroom or whatever, because it's already set up already.
Okay. Daryl, you're on the committee. What's your opinion?
In terms of committee meetings, probably the classroom. And it does give you the technology option if you have an extreme situation.
Dave already said he was classroom. John, you're on committee. What's your opinion?
Well, it isn't gonna cost anything to go to the classroom, there's more room there. I know the audit committee said they were gonna do audit there next month. It doesn't cost anything, so let's go to I'm down the other room.
I guess that gets the consensus from the committee. Need anything else? Okay, we'll have the committee meetings now in the classroom. Anything else?
I think if you're a committee member that would like to attend remotely, Debbie's still going to need notice to do that. And then the other key thing is going to be where you're attending remotely from. If you're attending remotely from a public place, then you're going to need to know that, because the public's going to have to be noticed. If you're going to be attending remotely from a non-public place, then it doesn't matter. Just let her know you're going to be attending remotely so we can get the technology set up. Because if everybody's going to be here, we don't need the technology.
So one last question that'll really irritate everybody. If you're not on committee and you want to attend remotely, can you still do it if it's down in there, so you're still listening even though you can't vote?
If we get it all set up, we're going to need to know that ahead of time.
But you need to notice that if you're not on committee.
No.
Right. So if I decided I wanted to zoom into public safety and it was sitting down there, you could, but I'm not on committee, so it doesn't matter. I can listen in and know what's going on. Or Daryl could, or John could, or Daryl, your chair, it was an example.
So that comes back, so if you don't want, let's take Mr. Shaw and put him at his house. Okay, because he's not a member of the committee. All Mr. Shaw wants to do is listen. We could continue to live stream, and then he could listen along with the rest of the world.
Because originally, last time you said you thought they would come through with a requirement saying we had a live stream anyway.
Right.
But that hasn't been defined yet.
That hasn't been stated. If you video conference, you have to live stream. If you don't video conference, you don't have to live stream.
Done.
The classroom's set up for that right now, right?
Yes. If everybody shows up. And there's
Then we
no,
can shut the switch off and have a meeting.
Yep.
there you go. But if one of you so if there's, I don't know how many are on this committee, I'm just trying to use.
7.
7. So if you have 4, you can say, good enough, we're not gonna let anybody else come in.
Well, it takes me like 45 minutes, so call me if that's the case. No, Bob.
Maybe we ought to consider making some lemonade out of the COVID lemons. I think there's a lot of people out there that really are liking, being able to listen into our committee meetings and seeing it on YouTube and doing that kind of stuff. It's a little annoying because I sit here and I get texts from some of my board members that are watching it. You didn't really say that, did you? Stuff like that, but I think that's a pretty positive benefit for disseminating our information to the public and getting more public participation. Maybe we ought to not think about ways around having to do that. Maybe we ought to think about ways to facilitate that.
Well, the meetings, so if all 7 of us, or you, I'm not in us, if you were here and you held a meeting down there, you could video that meeting and post it to the county's YouTube channel tonight, tomorrow, next week. Well, if you wanted to.
Yes, we could. I'm saying.
Just like the audio recordings in the old committee room, for lack of a better term, they were digital. They could be put online or, on the county's website, whenever you wanted to. It's instantaneous. It has to be instantaneous when a member videos in. It doesn't have to be necessarily instantaneous, but could still be done with the technology down there, and posted whenever you wanted to.
Just so I understand what you said, Roger, now, it looks like Sue and Daryl are at home, Daryl, looks like you're in your office, Sue's at home, is that correct? Well.
Correct.
With what you just described, they can watch it from those locations, but they could not be a member and participate from those locations?
As long as we had a physical forum here, they could.
And the public doesn't have to be there?
Right.
Okay, but there has to be the quorum here.
Right, if you don't have a quorum here, then you need to have a quorum someplace. You need to have enough members at enough public locations to make a quorum.
So if they were on the committee and they needed to be in the committee for a quorum, they could not be where they're at, they'd have to go to their town hall?
Correct.
And it would have to have been advertised in advance?
Right, because the public would have to know where to go as well.
How far in advance are you talking, 3 days or?
We're talking about the 5-day notice period.
5-day notice, okay.
And there also have to be extraordinary circumstances
And extraordinary circumstances.
for them to be at their houses.
Holy cow.
Not to be in public place, but at their houses, right?
Well, the situation we're in now, okay, I'm assuming they're not in public places.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm not, to that point, the only reason why I'm not is because there's a seniors lunch that I was supposed to be at anyway, is at town hall, so I'd be in conflict with that. So that's why I didn't go down there. But I mean, I could easily participate in a public place. If that was the case, then 5-day notice, right?
Right, of where your public place is gonna be. So again, the whole point is extraordinary circumstances. So, my dad died and I had to go to the funeral and I didn't know that. Okay, but I could still participate in the meeting from, let's say that my dad lived in Florida. All my parents are long gone, so this doesn't apply to me, but let's say my dad lives in Florida, I'm at the funeral, but I could still, as long as there's a quorum present here, I could still participate in the meeting using Zoom. And I would still count, and I could still vote, and because there's an extraordinary circumstances. Caregiving is another one that they itemized in there, in the state law. My mom is sick. I have to go to take care of her. I didn't know that. So extraordinary circumstances, quorum's present, I could still attend the meeting if I wanted to by video, and the board allowed them to, by video conference.
Thank you.
What else is around most of the cows?
If the board decides that's an extraordinary circumstance, because the board would have to decide that as part of a policy. Or again, if we don't pass a policy, then everybody's gotta be here.
That's a law.
Sue Clary first, then Don Rozelle.
Well, the local law that then authorizes you to pass the policy.
Thank you, Chairman. It's interesting because I thought about this as far as the public space, and take, for instance, in public spaces, Do you have an area that you can go into executive session and have it be an executive session? And I know our town hall does not. So I've been trying to think of other public spaces that could be available. I'm sure I'm not the only one that would have that problem. So it's an interesting concept. And how do you work your way through that?
And you can just show up, and then you don't have a problem.
John?
Take your computer to bed.
One good thing about having it in the classroom, the chairs aren't this comfortable, so it wouldn't have a meeting that go on forever.
I know. I like to keep the record. I think I'm only gonna beat my own old record. Does everybody understand what we're doing going forward? Nobody says yes, nobody says no.
The real question you have that the board has to ask itself is, in view of these changes, do you want to, allow, I just got my notice for the next meeting, by the way, my calendar. Do you want to allow video, if the board wants to allow video conferencing, they have to pass a local law authorizing video conferencing and then develop a policy that says, what those extraordinary circumstances are going to be and who decides whether the extraordinary circumstances are extraordinary enough, because you're never going to have an exhaustive list. If they don't, then don't do anything, and we're back to having in-person meetings, and we're done. If you want to start, I've got those, because when I saw they needed a local law, I've got the local law 3/4 written already.
And that's due in June.
It has to be by June, right? You have to pass it by June. And remember, to pass a local law by June, you have to have a public hearing. You have to introduce the local, unless we're going to have special meetings, you have to have a public hearing, and we already had the April meeting in May. Or introduce the local law in May, have a public hearing in June, and then you can go forward and do it.
Okay.
If you don't, I mean, you could always do it in August, but you still have to have a local law and after a public hearing.
So, I guess the bottom line question is do we want to be able to allow Zoom in our meetings? That's the bottom line. You have one person say no, I don't know how everyone thinks. I, for one, think Zoom meetings provide some convenience to people, for a lot of reasons. So, my consensus vote would be we should go ahead with the local law and get the policy in place.
I agree with Darrell that it's the way of the future, and there's going to be more and more things coming down the line, and everybody knows I love the Zoom concept. It's so much easier. So I would say our executive policy writer might want to think about writing a policy and bringing it forward. Doesn't look at me.
Roger looking at me? No, he's not.
But, and then we go ahead with bringing it up for some kind of video conferencing policy, and we still have time to say, no, we don't want to do it, but I think we should explore it. I think it's also an advantage for the Zooming for more than, for several of us. It is a long, thin county, so.
If somebody wants to make a motion that the county attorney draft a local law allowing for video conferencing persons, saying I'll draft a local law for you.
Moved by Dave,
Second.
seconded by Darrell. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We heard you.
Okay.
Thank you. Before we do wrap up, Melissa still has other that she'd like to discuss?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to circle back to the, discussion about this room.
$1,000 bond me draft?
Yeah. So as the treasurer stated, so we have funds available in the IT reserve. Terry let me know that she does have $30,000 that is budgeted currently, for upgrades to this room. So I guess I'm looking, for your approval or, direction as to whether or not you'd like us to pursue upgrading this room at this time, as far as getting quotes and moving forward with that, or if you would like us to wait.
I make a motion to start the research to upgrade this room.
Finance maybe?
Move it to finance?
That way we can get her a budget if it looks good.
Okay.
Okay. Dave made the motion to move it to finance, and Daryl seconded it, or Tim seconded, who?
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in
Just
favor, say aye.
real-
Oops, Daryl, you,
Yeah, I think on that one, I mean, we could use that. Don't we have to do some design stuff and all that, or is that work all been done? I mean, and we could roll some of that into the bigger project for the following year if we so choose.
We're talking about potentially we have funds to do it this year.
Yeah.
Well, 30,000. I mean, we got to do some engineer work.
Yeah, it was,
Al said there's more money in the capital fund for IT if we chose to use that. First step is to figure out how much it's gonna cost before we decide what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
and our
agreed.
initial was over 100, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. Yep. Thanks.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Now, is this motion, move it to finance?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I don't dare ask, is there any other?
He's on it for me.
Yes.
I didn't see the right sign, but he's making a lot of motion.
Okay, adjourned.